All right, here at Spherical, Adam with Deepak of Porter and Sale. I'm really excited to be entering into a new collaborative partnership, leveraging some of Porter and Sale's content to our client websites, pulled into our neighborhood guides. Really excited for everything that Porter and Sale's done from a technology perspective, a lot of creative alignment with us, a lot of similar clientele. And really excited for all that we can do in collaboration going forward. So welcome and thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, we share that excitement. I think there's a lot of good work to be done. And just the cross section of the type of hotels that we work with and the segment of hospitality that we focus on, it makes all the sense in the world.
Really specific, yeah. So let's start with just like a broad introduction of what Porter and Sale is and your offerings and all of that. And then I want to get into kind of some of your backstory, how you got into this, and then a little bit of looking forward. But to start with just sort of anyone who doesn't know Porter and Sale, just the kind of
Porter and Sale, we're a technology company that focuses specifically on hospitality. We're an omni-channel platform that does everything from covering the whole guest journey end to end. We share a similar ethos in terms of content being the driver of user engagement, and that's our specialty. We specifically focus on how does a hotel interact and interface with their guests, and we see Porter and Sale as the medium to do that the most effectively in the most optimized manner. So that includes everything from booking to pre-arrival communications, email, SMS, mobile check-in, keyless entry, native apps, iOS and Android, to everything from the data around a user and what a guest is doing, and leveraging that to ultimately deliver a better and enhanced hotel experience. So we're the technology platform that allows hotel properties to essentially facilitate that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I've loved seeing the evolution, and I think like one of the things that quickly in our first conversations was like, hey, we're doing similar things for similar clients, and we approached it at the core and the start, it's from slightly different angles. And so, and I think that the core of like the editorial and content foundation of what you do is where you've then built off in all these other areas.
100%.
And I think that one of the things that I've really enjoyed about your perspective is that it's a lot around the guest experience first. And so maybe talk a little bit about that, and then have you built on, hey, let's create great neighborhood recommendations and destination recommendations, and it's more guest experience centric than it is purely sales and marketing.
100%.
But then you backed into sales and marketing, where we've come at it sales and marketing angle and focus less on guest experience. So talk about just that like content.
There's a few things there. So
many
things to talk about there. I think from our perspective, the content is king, as they say, right? And ultimately, whatever solution you provide, whether it's technology driven or media driven, there needs to be a clear value proposition for that guest. And when it comes to hotels, it's experiential. That'll always be pervasive in everything that we do, every product line that we release, and how we work with hotels. That's always the lens of what we look at in terms of what is that guest experience, what is that user experience. When we created Porter and Sale, it was actually more important to see what not to do. There's so many solutions out there, technology and otherwise, that simply look at what a hotel wants and needs, but quite frankly, disregarding what that guest is. And that's where they fall short, and that's where a lot of solutions have simply just fell to the wayside. For us, that content is our secret sauce. Through that content, what we found is just premium guest engagement. Guests want to know where to go, what to do, and they want to experience that in a very authentic manner. So that editorial approach, that approach to UX, UI, very photography driven. For us, that is what that guest value is. That's where they're deriving that value from.
I think one of the things that I've recognized always is the significance of specific neighborhoods to hotel purchasing decisions, and then also for a hotel to have really a perspective on that neighborhood and how that kind of shapes what someone might view their experience of that to be. And so talk a little bit about that related to the way these content recommendations kind of give a sense of place within the neighborhood, and then partnerships and collaborations off of that and things like that.
I think it's twofold, right? So a guest or a prospective guest makes multiple decisions. They have so many options at their best in terms of where to go, what to do, which hotel to select, which neighborhood they want to explore. And if we don't take a holistic approach where essentially the hotel is married, quite frankly, to the neighborhood in which they exist, they need to be the advocate for that neighborhood. And in all the touch points that that hotel has with that guest, if they're not talking about the neighborhood, if it's not central to the dialogue with that guest, there's a really big missed opportunity in terms of establishing that genuine connection with that guest. So if you're not providing, you as in the hotel are not providing the right offer in terms of, hey, guest XYZ, Mr. Adam, you're at 60 Soho. Let me tell you what you should be doing at Soho, how we can better enhance your experience in this specific neighborhood. You've chosen the brand 60 to go to Soho, and then on top of that, 60 is supposed to enhance your experience that in that neighborhood itself. That is a huge opportunity, and the hotel needs to take advantage of it. And quite frankly, guests expect it.
Totally. Yeah, and it's one of the things that we find, just from that decision making, and even from like when you look at SEO and non-branded keywords in SEO, that's a lot of neighborhood and destination keywords, and they're looking at that first as like, hey, where do I want to be? But then also that kind of, who is this hotel affiliating with, and what's my experience going to be like there through that lens.
And I think hotels, I think it's a very archaic notion, if you go back a decade or even further beyond that, where hotels always tried to keep a guest inside their doors. But I think, quite frankly, I mean, we're travelers. If you go to any hotel, you're never just locked in inside the actual property. You're going to explore the neighborhood. You're going to explore what's around. You're there for a reason, and not just to be inside the four walls. So hotels need to capitalize on that and be a leader in that conversation that guest is going to have with that neighborhood.
Right? Yeah, I think that's like, it is like our old school mentality that like, hey, our whole guest experience is going to be within this, or kind of, even the kind of old school concierges that, have sales partnerships to sell you tickets to the classic show or something, that it's like, it's purely self-serving in a lot of ways, of like the old school perspective. There's like, how do we get you to eat in our restaurant? How do we get you to book what we tell you to book, versus having more of a kind of guest first, guest-centric approach. It's just like, hey, like how are we going to create a great experience for you, and do that in a compelling and engaging way, and content is a great piece of that. Let's talk a little bit about technology, because I think you guys started in this content piece, which was super important, and you've really expanded in terms of technology. And as you said, there's a lot of players that have dabbled in different things, be it the like hotel branded app that we sold that 10 years ago when I was working on property, we were pitched different things, and you do an app and no one downloads it, and so there's the app, there's new evolutions with keyless entry, things like that. So sort of you guys classify yourself as, you very much are a technology company, as well as content editorial, but how have you determined your technology roadmap? What are you excited about? What do you see coming?
To content and the delivery of that content in a way that the guest wants to experience that content is the heart and soul of Porter & Sale, undoubtedly. Through that guest engagement, we then started to realize, hey, we can use and further utilize technology as a medium to deliver more and more enhanced guest experience. So where we started with content in terms of exploring that neighborhood in the best way possible and having the hotel be the center of that dialogue, what else can we be doing? Why is it that the hotel is only having a dialogue with the guest when they're actually at the hotel? The booking may have been made weeks or several months beforehand. The dialogue should start there. So then we started to dabble in pre-arrival communications and how do people communicate nowadays? It's via email, it's via their mobile phone. So we made everything very mobile centric. And what is the point of that communication? Why would a guest want to be contacted by their hotel? So we thought about it from a very holistic perspective in terms of, if we were a guest, what is the experience that we'd want? And then we created what the solution is. We'd want to personalize and customize our stay. We'd want to pre-book a spa appointment if I'm heading down to the Edition in Miami. We'd want to make sure that, hey, I want my check-in time to be commensurate with when I land, not forced to be 3 p.m. or 3:30, whatever it is. So we started then enabling tools to make sure on a pre-arrival basis that guest can actually facilitate what they actually want. From there, it started to grow into like, okay, how can we expand it to more utilitarian functionality? Airlines, for instance, not that they're the most innovative, but what they do and have established over the last decade or so is a user behavior where we're used to checking in online right now. Why isn't that the case for hotels? We should be able to select what floor we want. We should be able to select which room we want. We should be able to upgrade at the touch of a button. So that's what we started enabling in terms of offers and upgrades. And again, not from necessarily a, hey, let's sell you, let's upsell you. You know, what we didn't want to create, going back to, it's so important to understand what you don't want to have the guest experience is, you know, the tacky front desk agent who's going to say, hey, spend $100 more, we'll put you in a suite. That can be an experience that's not necessarily the best for a guest, especially not aligned with the type of brands that we work for. So how do you do that in a way where actually you spur the desire for that guest to want to do that? So, and it's all done through content. It's all done through smart content, not necessarily what, but also when. And that's where the pre-arrival comes into place.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's an undertone with some of this that I really like of this kind of not being so self-serving. And I think that so many people say, like, hey, we have to sell, we have to sell, we have to sell, and that's what's going to make you the most money. But actually, we've seen a lot in this year, some big examples of purely content-driven communication that have driven more transactions than transactional. You know? And it's like, hey, actually, if you create great value to a customer and you give them something that's interesting and engaging, they'll buy your product versus just saying, hey, buy our product and expecting them to buy your product. And so there's some of that. The pre-arrival piece too, I had an interesting kind of, that's been a piece in my mind for a couple of years. We had an interesting point from one of our luxury hotel partners that their sales team was speaking about the interactions with their travel agents and just generally interactions with guests. And one of the things they identified was the point between transaction and arrival is by far the most important part of the sales process as a whole, but also by far the most ignored. And so it's like we do all of these things as marketers and everything else to sell someone on buying a $5,000 stay, and you get your confirmation receipt, and then you don't hear anything from the hotel until you've left, and then they try to sell you again. And then you get a post-stay email or a pre-stay email that's purely transactional. And it's all so self-serving, whereas that gap, if you take advantage of that gap and you say, hey, I just made this big transaction, I'm really excited to stay at this hotel, and the hotel's providing you value leading in, there'll be so much more loyalty, there'll be so much anticipation of stay, 100%. So much more willingness to upsell, and that whole experience of like, hey, we're excited to have you, that can all be automated and done in strategic, creative, content-driven ways.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly, if we think about the traveler's journey, I always kind of, in my head, think about 4 boxes, right? Like, time of booking, where you're doing your R&D as to where I should go, then the time between you, the pre-arrival period before you get to the destination, then at destination, and then post-stay. And on the bookends, there's just so much of a focus from the Expedias of the world who are trying to make you book and book and book to at the back end where, all right, post-stay, how do we get you back in there? That's where you have so much investment by some of the large hotel chains that do everything around loyalty. That loyalty and that infrastructure is all built around getting you back. But we saw the gap as, okay, you've made a huge decision to come to a certain hotel. Why has that hotel gone ghost on you until you actually arrive? And then when you arrive, you're providing a commodity, or you've commoditized just the room, and you're not thinking about it from an experiential point of view. And when they leave, then you try to sell them again. So there was this huge gap, and that's why we started in destination, neighborhood-oriented experiences, pre-arrival. What does that communication look like? How do you then ultimately deliver the best guest experience? And as a result of delivering that best guest experience, I guarantee you your sales team is going to be happy because you've had very meaningful touch points, and the more meaningful touch points, the more authentic they are. We've seen, at least from the data and very empirically, that you get higher conversion on sales ultimately.
And I think that it takes like a little bit of a savvy hotel, I mean, more and more becoming savvy like this, particularly in the luxury and lifestyle space, but to understand that the whole driving revenue, as a whole is more complex than just the push, and that it's really like having a holistic view of that. And so I think that's been super cool. For us, we've touched on like neighborhood guides on our websites, but more from a lead gen perspective, and still very, sensible content and all of that, and blog content, neighborhood guides, but more, hey, how do we position this for SEO driven content or inbound content? And I think that this, our collaboration by integrating your content with our websites on the front end, but then also having extensions of people having the app and keyless entry and everything else that we can create together, more of a cohesive experience from website to pre-stay to post-stay by
Yes.
putting our pieces together there, and there's a lot that can be done. In terms of anything else, and we're going into 2019, and kind of, I know you've got a lot of things you're working on behind the scenes, but anything you're seeing from either from the company that you can speak to, or trends that you're kind of excited about looking forward to?
Sure. I think there's two big trends that we're seeing and we're really excited about going into the new year. One is sort of a new way to book. If you think about, let's go to booking.com. It's very rote. I'm a user, all right, I enter a destination and these are my dates, and you get a plethora of options pumping out. I think that's very 1999. It literally has not changed since 1999, right? So the same approach that we take in terms of experience regarding the neighborhood, regarding when you're at the destination, regarding exploration, that discovery piece should also be very much applied to booking. So we're really excited about facilitating that booking from the start of the journey, from the lens of someone who's trying to discover where to go, what to do, what brands do they want to explore. That to me, I think, is sort of the next maturity level in terms of the evolution of booking. It's not going to be, I'm going to Amsterdam for 3 days, tell me where I should be. It's actually going to be in very much the same way. When you land in Soho, what should I do? I want to walk out on the street, I want to explore. I'm hungry, where should I go? Oh, the sights, the sounds, the smells. That is what we want to translate and convey in a digital medium for the booking experience as well, right? So you can then understand, actually, you know what, next weekend, I don't want to go to Amsterdam, I should be going to Morocco. And these are the reasons why. There's a discovery element that I think is still left wanting, and that's what we've released in terms of booking. To me, the second thing, which also is very, very interesting, is this idea of sustainability. And the new luxury, as I like to sort of characterize it as. Luxury is not necessarily defined as a fancy chandelier at the Mandarin, right? I do firmly believe that there's another stage of luxury that's emerging, which is sustainability. There's so much fervor around single-use plastics, for instance, right? And keyless entry, for example, one of our product lines that we're starting to get a lot more traction in, is great, but it's not gimmicky. Think about all the plastic cards that one saves, right? So it's not necessarily, hey, this is a cool, fun way to open my door. There actually is a component around sustainability around it. And I think that's pretty exciting because we can leverage technology, we can leverage solutions to actually enhance not only the guest experience, but think of it from the perspective of sustainability, which now has become an increasingly more important component of the new luxury. And that is a trend I think we're super excited about.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that from you, and definitely something I've been focused on. We've got a partnership with Ben Pundle's Stay Plastic Free with Edition, and he's been really successful about making major moves of removing single-use plastics in a short period of time, and so we collaborated with him on that and continue to build that up. And Kin Travel, another sustainable-driven travel company that we're close partners with, and so I'm happy to see some of that trend pick up and get real steam and get attention from people. So,
100%.
And then we'll zoom back just quickly of kind of like pre. Porter and Sale, just kind of how did you get in all of this, and like where did you come from and all that?
So I'm a kid from Queens, so I'm a local New Yorker. But I left, so I haven't been in the city for a good 14 years or so. But in a previous life, I was a boring financier, but gave me the opportunity to live in Asia, which was a lot of fun. Lived in Hong Kong for quite some time. Decided to leave that life and get into technology, and worked at Dropbox, during the early days. Had a lot of fun working in San Francisco, the whole Silicon Valley bit. Came to New York, helped open up the office here, and then got the bug to want to start my own business. So that's where I linked up with my co-founder, and we started Porter and Sale, and here we are.
Cool. So we did finance, technology, and now got you into hospitality.
Exactly.
It's one of these niches that I think, for me, I've got the bug of that industry, and I find it endlessly interesting. Of all the different elements. Hotels are actually very complicated businesses. There's a lot of pieces. They're also historically quite traditional businesses, so there's a lot of room for innovation. And
definitely,
I think that in the last 5 years or so, there's a whole new wave of interesting hotels and technology companies and, all of it. And so, excited to see what you've done and excited for 2019.
Same here.
Lots to come.
Awesome.
Cool. Cheers. From Spherical, Adam and Deepak.